This week on A Lively Experiment, the Democratic presidential ticket is complete as the Harris-Walz campaign hits the road. And the heat is on for the former mayor of Woonsocket as a new report sheds light on a controversial land deal.
A Lively Experiment is generously underwritten by...
Hi, I'm John Hazenwhite Jr. For over 30 years, A Lively Experiment has provided insight and analysis of the political issues that face Rhode Islanders. I'm a proud supporter of this great program and Rhode Island PBS.
Joining us on the panel, Ken Block, founder of Watchdog RI, retired URI Political Science Professor Maureen Moakley, and Ted Nesi, politics and business editor for WPRI TV. Hello and welcome. I'm Jim Hummel, and it is great to have you with us. There is a lot to get to locally this week, but first, Kamala Harris raised a few eyebrows, choosing Minnesota Governor Tim Walz Tuesday as her vice presidential running mate. The ticket drew huge crowds this week, but Harris acknowledges she and Walz are the underdogs against Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. Maureen, I guess the question is, how long can they keep up the momentum? There's a lot going on. We have this week and then the convention next week, and then we really kind of get off to the races after Labor Day.
Yeah, I mean, I think what they're doing now is they're just trying to make do with this environment in terms of the enthusiasm and things like that. And I think that's the thing, getting around and introducing themselves. I think they're going to have to get to the point where they're going to have to get more specific about policy. And I think that's going to be a little bit of a challenge, because I think they're going to have to move, sort of frame it a little less in the left and try to talk about that. And but I think it was a good choice. I think Shapiro had a lot of baggage because of Gaza. And I think also she disagreed with him on Gaza. She's shown a lot more interest in the plight of the Gazans. And so I think there's a little space there. And so I think there would have been protests. You know, so the party is united. It's a little to the left. I think they have to move it over. But I think basically Wall was a good choice, and I think they'll do well.
I don't think there's going to be a lot of policy that comes up in this election. I think it's going to be a stark choice. It's pro-MAGA, anti-MAGA, pro-Trump, anti-Trump. And I think that everyone's going to dig in on that, and that's what we're going to get the most messaging about. Trump isn't really strong talking about policy at this point, which is one of the reasons I don't think there'll be a lot of discussion about it. The Democrats solved their lagging support issue that they were suffering from under Biden. And from my perspective, having gone through the data carefully in 2020, it looks to me like we are going to have a very close outcome, very similar to what we saw in 2020 at this point.
Where it comes down to that handful of
it's going to come
states.
down to moderate voters and which way they decide to go. Trump lost their support in 2020, and that's why he lost the race. And he hasn't solved that problem. So that's one of the reasons I feel comfortable predicting at this point that I think the Democrats come away with a victory in terms of the presidential race, unless Trump begins to change his messaging.
And we got a long time between now and November. We don't know.
We do. I mean, I've been astounded at the polling shows the race has. I mean, Biden was collapsing by the end there. And he was threatening to take down, I think, a lot of House and Senate seats with him if that had continued. But we have to remember, I mean, Kamala Harris had her numbers were lousy leading into the switch. There had always been a lot of talk in Washington that there was a lot of staff turnover in her office. No one was expecting the level of enthusiasm she generated so fast among the party base. I mean, they're drawing these huge crowds at these rallies, and I do think there's a story in the Washington Post this morning as we tape that, Trump is frustrated because I think, he was planning to run against Biden. I think he thought he knew how to beat, especially a beleaguered Joe Biden. And he's now found himself in a very different race against a considerably younger opponent. I mean, just this week, it's been striking me that Trump's really mostly off the campaign trail while Harris is doing this battleground state tour with Walz. I mean, you really have flipped. There was a reason, Biden was seen as too old, but Trump's only a few years younger than him, and he's keeping a fairly low pace of activity right now, too.
I wonder at some point if the Trump campaign's having a hard time figuring out. I wonder in the flipping of the script, whether you say, now Donald Trump seems like a pretty vibrant 78, 79-year-old, he rambles a little bit at times, whether the Harris campaign's going to say, look, if Trump doesn't make it 4 years, do you really want J.D. Vance? as your president? I mean, it's not just he's filling the role in vice president. Do you want him elevated? What's going to happen to Trump when he's 83 years old?
I think that's a good point. I also want to ask you about what you talked about policy. I mean, it isn't like they're going to have policy discussions, but I mean, they are, Trump is calling them communists. And I mean, they take specific things and specific issues. It's not going to be a debate, but it's going to be a row in terms of questioning their positions. And I think that might matter.
Well, I mean, as a centrist voter myself, messaging like socialist, communist, the labels that extremists use to describe the other side aren't particularly effective for the voters in the middle. So that's one of the reasons I don't think either candidate should worry too much about that kind of messaging from the other side. It's a stark set of choices here, and there's only probably a couple million voters across the country who haven't made up their minds already. And reaching them and convincing them which way to go is going to be the story of this race.
I do think, though, Jim, just to Ken's point there, I have been surprised that there was a measurable share of voters in the swing states who were not going to vote for Biden or were not saying they supported him, who actually were quickly gettable for Harris. There was a Wisconsin poll yesterday where I want to say Biden was at like 43% against Trump if he had stayed in the race. They asked the same group of voters, but Harris was at 49 or 50. So that's a 6-7 points difference between if Biden had stayed on the ticket versus switching to Harris, at least right now. That's a massive change in a country that's as 50-50 as this is.
Yeah, but I also think I'm worried about your prediction that it's going to be close, because I really think if it's going to be close, there's going to be an aftermath in terms of questioning this, riots and things like that. Excuse me. I mean, I think that's a real issue. So I hope the enthusiasm and the momentum carries off, and he could do better than close. What do you think?
It's going to be close. I don't think there's. I guess there's always a chance that it won't be as close as it was in 2020. The demographics are changing. Younger voters have come in. Older voters have died off. That tends to help the Democrats. Younger people tend to trend more liberal than older people who tend to trend a little bit more conservative. At the end of the day, it is going to be really close, and how we as a country prepare ourselves, talk about the claims that get made. There are going to be claims that get made at the end of this race. There's no question about it.
Final question about debates. So there was the ABC debate, and Trump waffled a little bit on that. He says, I want to go to Fox News. What a surprise. And I wonder, I mean, if I'm Kamala Harris, I'm not going to a network that's been found to lie to its viewers, right? Quite frankly.
Plus the fact he wanted an audience. I mean, he wanted a rally, not a debate.
But what do you think it's going to wind up being, ultimately? Are they going to do more than one, do you think?
I think a lot. I don't even know if they'll do one at this rate. I think both sides, and I think so, as we said, think of how much has changed just in the last 2 months, right? We've switched
candidates. Doesn't the last 2 weeks feel like 2 years?
Oh, I mean, it's astonishing. I keep thinking about, the debate was only 5,
it's
maybe
been
now
less
6
than
weeks
it was
ago.
A month ago was the assassination attempt.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
And so I think to have that much news that fast, I mean, the 1968 comparisons are probably overdone, but it gives me a little feel for how people must have felt that year when the crush of news was happening so fast and things seemed so discombobulated.
What about debates?
I don't think we're going to see a debate.
Really?
Biden was poorly advised to engage in that debate. It was catastrophic to his campaign. Trump was able to handle Biden. I think he has his hands full with Harris. And the risk to his campaign is if he, comparatively speaking, comes across as poorly debating Harris as Biden did debating Trump, his campaign could be over.
Yeah.
The only thing is, I mean, I think she's going to show up at ABC. And I think that's going to make him look really bad. I mean, she's going to show up.
The empty chair.
The empty chair thing.
Right.
And I think that's going to matter. And I wonder if that will move him towards accepting the debate.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll know a little bit closer to time. All right. Former Woonsocket Mayor Elisa Baldelli Hunt was back in the news. A big report came out about a land deal. We all suspected that may have been why she left office. She cited health reasons. Former U.S. Attorney Aaron Wiseman with a pretty scathing report about how it fell together, that she really, Ted, tried to keep it, and your team did a great job on this. Eli Sherman was reporting on it, that she tried to hide this deal. It was with a former boss of hers. She's using federal money money and trying to hide it from the city council and kind of directing her underlings to do the same. The report does not look good.
It doesn't. And Lisa Baldelli-Hunt, I mean, she has yet to say anything substantive about this in her own defense.
Probably smart.
Well, and so she didn't talk to Weissman. When she briefly flirted with a comeback, I spoke with her in June, and she said she'd talk about all this at a later date. So we haven't heard any sort of mitigating version of it from her side, and the facts as laid out by Weissman, are very damaging to her, particularly. I thought in Eli's story, he mentioned that staffers in Woonsocket City Hall suggested they felt that their jobs were at risk if they communicated about this land deal with anyone outside of the mayor and her inner circle, the council, others, etc. I mean, that, now I don't think they've alleged Baldelli-Hunt told them that, but it felt like they didn't need to be told. They knew this was not something that should be discussed.
It's so depressing. Stories like this seriously depress me. We hear way too many stories like this about the people that we elect to govern us, to lead us, ending up in getting jammed up, to use a Rhode Island term. I don't know why this happens with the frequency it does here in our state. It's a disincentive to people to serve. It's a disincentive to people to vote. And I just really wish that we figured out a way to deal with whatever dynamics create these sorts of situations and remove them so that we can get a better form of government than we're getting right now.
I agree. I mean, it almost as bad as though the deal itself was the actions that took place in terms of what went on. And, it's depressing to think about the climate that these people are in. My question is, how culpable is she?
Well, and I'd love to ask her, right? And she won't talk.
No, but I mean, even if we know that
but the money wasn't.
badly,
If the money was spent,
That's
the
my
feds
point.
would come in.
Right.
But the deal never got done.
That's the point.
Because it was reversed, right? I think it's just. To Ken's point about, Rhode Islanders get so depressed by seeing these kind of scandals. Every 6 to 12 months feels like they bubble up somewhere. But the flip side is, Baldelli-Hunt was so popular in Woonsocket. Yes, she had very vocal critics. We can think of some of them. But she ran unopposed the same year she was removed from office.
But that was because of the friends and family plan.
But
she had a lot of people on the payroll.
But I think that raises the bigger question, which is how do you have checks and balances, particularly in municipal government, where where the mayor often can act pretty unchecked. I think that's not just a Woonsocket thing, and you see that here.
There were checks and balances. She went around the checks and balances.
But the fact that she could do that, the fact that she felt strong enough that she could keep the council from having information, et cetera, is out of
So I did a story 10 years ago this summer about her son's baseball team getting unadvertised jobs. When think of this, unemployment was 10% at the time. She basically gave them the jobs, and I confronted her about it. And she said, I said, did you advertise? You mean in the newspaper? No, we just kind of spread the word. And as I thought about that, and then we did some more stories about it, we titled it Friends and Family. She came from the House, and she was on the leadership. She was on Gordon Fox's team, kind of, and had cover. And I always thought that she kind of carried that. She carried that to City Hall.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I just think that. By the way, I just want to say this happens everywhere. It's not just Rhode Island. Please.
I have had people who lived and worked in Iowa say they think it's worse here than they felt it was in Iowa.
Sure.
So I also don't always want to overdraw that every single state's like this.
Well, no, but I mean, I think, we could get into data that suggests corruption and so forth, and then we come out in the middle range. So let's put it that way. But I think it's disgraceful, and at the very least, she is disgraced. And I don't know what else you can do about it.
Well, and now the question comes is, will it get referred to law enforcement? Would they do anything about it?
Right, and so far there's no strong sign that any of them are looking closely at it, which is the other question. I mean, if there's, as said, if the deal was reversed, is it just going to be a political issue, or could it turn out to be more? And that's just unclear to me as of today.
Okay, what would a lively experiment be without a little Washington Bridge talk? We still don't know when it's going to be completed or how much it's going to cost. Ken, I know you lie awake at night thinking about this. You wish the governor spent more time lying awake.
I wish the governor spent more time in the traffic jams that we all who have to go back and forth to the East Bay have to deal with. It's extraordinary, the disconnect between what the professional engineering community has to say about what has happened so far, about the bridge, a procurement that yielded no one competing to try to win the project. And frankly, the biggest problem of all that we have right now, and it's extraordinary to me, is the lack of transparency. Rhode Island government has locked down information about this procurement, about what's happening, and it's utterly wrong. There isn't a more important story to almost anybody who lives on the East Bay than what's happening with this bridge. And to take the RFI that's out there right now, which is asking vendors why they didn't bid, and to withhold their answers is outrageous, and it points to how desperately we need to change our open records laws.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, what about the lawsuit? Do you think that was proven?
No. There's a small group of companies that do construction projects in Rhode Island, and just about all of them are being sued over the bridge right now. There's a massive disincentive to them to want to get involved in a new project with the DOT who's suing them.
I do. People pointed out to me the contrast between this and the credit union crisis and Bruce Sunland. Now, I don't want to state this is as bad as that was with people, protesting outside the State House, but just the way that was handled. Sunland was brand new, so he could really be away from culpability. He quickly had that Vartan-Gregorian report done, which I think, not that it made people happy, but it did give a feeling that what happened here has become quickly clear and we can move past that. And this with the bridge and the sort of dragging out of the day of reckoning, now we're more focused on lawsuits than a look at how government is operating in Rhode Island. It reminds me of covering 38 Studios, where again, I think part of why it lingered so long was because of the drib-drab of what had really happened and who had pushed it, which is why you have an independent commission. But of course, people in power often don't want that kind of warts and all report to come out because they might look bad.
And we've talked about this. Wouldn't you want a little bit more accountability and put the lawsuit off to the side?
That's what I thought.
I mean, because it's basically all the reporters have gotten the Heisman now. Oh, I really can't talk about it because it's in litigation. Fine. Just let's get some accountability. Nobody, as far as I know, has been suspended, lost a job, lost a paycheck. And I think that's aggravating, particularly for the three of us who are on the East Bay, trying to get back and forth.
Whoever put together the RFP that nobody bid on should no longer be working on putting proposals together because they clearly don't understand the marketplace. They don't understand what the vendors need. There are millions of unanswered questions about how this bridge fell apart and nobody caught it before it did fall apart, right? I mean, these are issues that land directly inside the Department of Transportation, and there's been no accountability within that organization, and there hasn't even been an attempt to address any of these issues by either that organization or the governor, and it's a massive failure.
I will say, Jim, I can see, to do the reporter thing, devil's advocate for Governor McKee and his team. If they think about, frankly, the politics of this in part, they say, look, he needs a message in 2026 about how he handled this. Obviously, there are going to be plenty of things to criticize.
I held him accountable.
Well, and I think if they're able to point to, we sued these companies, the settlement money starts coming in that they hope to get, like happened with 38 Studios, I think they think that's something that might be more tangible to voters once that process has gone through than it is right now. I don't know if that'll be the case, but I could see that argument being made.
Look at you, your faces.
Are you kidding? This is going on for years. I mean, when is
It's
this
going to go
project-
beyond the election.
Yeah, when is this bridge going to be finished? I mean, you're still going to be in
He has
traffic.
to have his elections in 26 whether he likes it or not. So they have to make the play. They have to make
The more important question is, when will this project start?
Yeah,
that's-
that
Well,
is
when will
true.
the bidding start?
I mean,
we don't
it's-
even know that right now.
This is the gift that keeps on giving to opponents. I mean, he's in hot water as far as I'm concerned.
But don't you also think, because of what you said, that they didn't know about the RFP? Doesn't that give the construction companies leverage? Hey, nobody else is bidding. We're going to jack the price by 30%, and we're the only game in town. Nobody wants this. So if you want to pay for it, we'd be happy to do
and
the job
which is
for
why,
you.
to Ken's point, I'd love to see
Yeah,
what they
what
all
the questions
told
were.
them in this request
And
for
elaborate on that a
information.
little bit. So it went out for the RFI. 11 companies said they gave them the feedback, but they won't announce that publicly?
Right, they won't announce it publicly, which is outrageous because the RFI is distinct and separate from whatever the next RFP is going
Request
to be,
for information,
which doesn't
right?
exist right now.
Yeah.
Some of those vendors hopefully told the DOT that your timelines were unreasonable. Nobody could build this bridge over the course of 2 years, and we can't do it. There was tons of risk that was put onto the shoulders of the winning bidder. They had to remediate any environmental toxicity at the river bottom and this and that. I mean, this RFP was unbiddable, as I understand it, to just about every.
And then the governor
company.
said, "Oh, we kind of knew that was going to happen." Right?
Stunning and ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. There are an awful lot of uncontested races. We talked about this last week. There is one contested race that's very interesting. The Senate President, Dominick Ruggerio, is facing a challenge, Lenny Seo, who challenged him a couple of years ago. He gave a little dig. Ted, you did this story that, look, the Senate President has had health problems that are now documented. Kathy Gregg had a story earlier. We all knew this around the State House. And he missed a lot of the session, and he missed a key fundraiser. So Seo says the time might be for you to step aside, Mr. President.
Yeah, and it's, you can see, I mean, it is, especially after Joe Biden decided to step aside amid party pressure. I mean, there's certainly other than Lenny Seo, there's no one saying publicly Donnie Ruggerio needs to step aside. But I think, I think at some point you understand that people aren't going to say that, because as long as someone is the Senate president, you can't go against him. But certainly behind the scenes, there are concerns that, is his health going to be good enough to lead? Because if you think about it, there's also, we talk about Democrats versus Republicans, there's also House versus Senate. The Senate has its priorities that aren't the House's priorities. They need a strong leadership team that's able to go toe-to-toe with. Joe Shekarchi is a very powerful House Speaker right now. And so will Senate President Ruggerio, if he wins re-election, be in strong enough shape to lead the fight for senators on their priorities next year? Again, I don't imagine anyone's going to make any frontal push against him. But I do think as long as it's not clear that his health is fully restored, that those concerns are going to linger.
It's interesting. When he started out, when Teresa Pavlidis was the president, he was really the back power person behind the scenes. And he seemed to like that role. And then when she left the presidency of the Senate, he came in to do an interview on the round table. And he was very halting. I mean, you could clear he wasn't ready for this public exposure, so to speak. But he got through it.
He's grown into it.
That's what I'm 20 about. Then he grew into it. And I think he kind of likes it. And I think he's enjoying that position.
I think he definitely likes it.
That public position. But it's funny how before that he had talked to Ian Donis. He said, I think I'm going to retire. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of like he wants to hang on, and that's the problem.
Well, he's older, he's retired, and at some point, look, it's like Joe Biden. They kind of get the trappings of the office. Because what else is there? If I leave, then what am I going to do?
And the Senate president said that kind of explicitly. He's like, I don't, what am I going to do? Golf all day? Like, what am I going to do all day?
Yeah, I don't play golf, right?
But okay, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, zooming out from Ruggerio's situation, we do have, especially in our federal government, we have a lot of octogenarian leaders.
Chuck Grassley, 91.
You can go on and on, right? I mean,
right?
And it's a problem because they simply don't represent the interests of the vast majority of the voters. And I think it's harmful in some ways. I feel for Joe Biden. It took a lot to convince him to leave the race, and I'm sure that wasn't an easy choice for him to make. But we need new generations of leaders. Even my generation, Kamala Harris's generation, still appears to be old to the younger voters who are just coming in at this point. So
my generation looks older than
yeah, right. We have a generational problem with how we govern ourselves. And from Ruggerio's perspective, I mean, I'm a skeptic of the Rhode Island legislature. They seldom do things that I think are right, proper, or necessary of what we need to have done. So it almost doesn't matter to me who the Senate president is. They're unlikely to make me happy.
Do you think? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, but in counter-distinction to Biden, the voters have a chance to do this.
Right, with Ruggerio in the fall.
With Ruggerio in the fall. I mean, if enough is made of it, if the campaign goes on, I mean, at least the voters have a say.
But if I was CEO, I'd say, is he going to make it the next 2 years and be a fully functioning? It's the same thing we talked about with J.D. Vance and the president with Trump. So let's do this. Let's get to outrageous and or kudos, and then we will get back maybe if we have a little bit more time. Ted, what do you have this week?
This is a classic complaint of a reporter, but I saw on social media yesterday Democrats actually getting mad at reporters who very gingerly said they hoped at some point soon Kamala Harris does an interview with somebody. Like she still hasn't actually taken and sat down with, 60 Minutes or go on with Norah O'Donnell or
How
whatever.
about a press conference?
Well, that would
Let
be
her
great
rip.
too. Well,
Whatever you want to talk about.
What actually, my outrage isn't even her not doing that. It's it's strategy. People can criticize and decide what they think. It's the criticism of reporters saying you should talk and answer questions as a terrible, horrible attack by the press corps on a candidate. It's like this is just the 101 of what we should expect of public officials, that they will take questions, that they will sit for interviews. She can choose who to be interviewed by if it's going to be a one-on-one, but to say that it's out of bounds for reporters to suggest someone should be taking questions seems just bananas to me.
Yeah, it is. Ken, what do you have?
I'm going to come back to transparency in government and Rhode Island's open records laws. They absolutely need to be not just refreshed, I think they need to be rewritten from the ground up. And what we need to see in our government is better transparency. The public shouldn't have to fight and prove to government that the records that they want, that we pay for, should be made available to us. In general, unless there is an overwhelming reason not to provide it,
The default should be
the
open.
default should be open and only closed under very narrow and specific circumstances. I have tried to get data from different levels of government in Rhode Island for years. It's always been painful. It's always been a delay game. You ask, you never hear anything for 30 days at the end, and then the charging on what everything happens. We need much better, and the Washington Bridge debacle and how the Department of Transportation is conducting itself is exactly the reason we need to throw out what we have and build something else.
Here.
Yeah.
Maureen, you get the last minute.
Okay, I have last minute. I have kudos for the Olympics, for the Paris Olympics. I think the French did a wonderful job. There's a little raggedy on the end.
The Seine River notwithstanding.
The Seine River, no, but there were glitches. But I thought the opening was wonderful. I thought the games were wonderful. And it was so refreshing to see this international group come together and be relatively supportive. I mean, the Americans did well, but beyond that, I think it's important to see sportsmanship and the global nature of this. It was just refreshing.
Well, the other thing too is to see people in the stands.
Yeah.
And you remember Tokyo, it got delayed, right? And to see people, and I had forgotten people had to watch from halfway around the world via Zoom. It was awful.
Yeah. No, it was very gratifying. It really was. And,
Great. Yep, and that'll end this weekend. Folks, thank you for joining us. We appreciate your time. Ted, good to see you back, and Maureen and Ken. If you don't catch us Friday at 7 or Sunday at noon, we archive all of our shows at ripbs.org/lively. You can catch us on social media and wherever you get your favorite podcast. Every week we have something amazingly new to talk about, even during the doldrums, the dog days of August. So join us back here next week. We'll have the very latest in politics, what's going on in Rhode Island, and anything else that's on our mind. Have a great week. Join us next week as a lively experiment continues.
A Lively Experiment is generously underwritten by...
Hi, I'm John Hazen-White Jr. For over 30 years, A Lively Experiment has provided insight and analysis of the political issues that face Rhode Islanders. I'm a proud supporter of this great program and Rhode Island PBS.